Hello class. This is Chapter 2, Rhythm, Melody, and Harmony. There are a lot of terms in here, and if you have not been in an orchestra or a band or a choir before, some of them may be new to you. Hopefully you learned some of them just in a basic music class in school growing up. But just remember that you probably already know what most of these things are, you just don't know the vocabulary yet. So that is what this chapter is mainly about, and you may have to study the vocabulary in this chapter before the test to sort everything out. Try to chunk it up into terms that go with rhythm, terms that go with melody, and terms that go with harmony. And so let's start right off here with rhythm. A beat is the regularly recurring pulse dividing the passing of time into equal units, the basic unit of rhythm. Beats in music, art music that you're going to be hearing this semester are sometimes really easy to hear and sometimes harder to make out orally. So I will be making sure that if I ever ask you a question about rhythm that the beat is very clear. When we hear pop music that has a clear beat, we often immediately respond by tapping our foot or clapping. Sometimes we want to get up and move around to a real catchy dance tune. But in general, just think about how we love to divide up time as people. We love to know how many minutes it's going to be before
This is Chapter
our
2,
friend is ready,
Rhythm, Melody,
or how
and
many
Harmony.
hours we're going to have to work.
There are a lot
how many
of
days
terms
until
in here,
the end
and
of
if
the
you
week,
have not been in an orchestra
and so
or
on
a
and so
band or a
forth.
choir before,
It's just
some
our
of
human
them
nature.
may be new to you.
So
Hopefully
the speed at which the
just in a
beat is
basic
happening
music
in any
class
given
in school growing
work
up
of music is called the
but
tempo.
just remember that
We divide these
you
up
probably
into
already know what most of these things are,
lively,
you just don't know the vocabulary yet.
which is
So
allegro.
that is what this chapter
This
is mainly
term
about.
is Italian,
and
for some reason
you
many
may
years
have
ago
to
we
study
decided that
the
vocabulary
Italian
in this
terms
chapter
for speed and
before the test
many
to
other
sort
musical
everything out.
elements.
Try
are
to
going
chunk
to
it up
rule the day.
into
So
terms that go with rhythm, terms that go with melody, and terms that go with harmony.
Lively
And so
is
let's
allegro,
start right off
very
here
fast,
with
is
rhythm.
called presto.
A
Fairly
beat
brisk
is the
means a little bit
regularly
slower than those
recurring
first two.
pulse dividing
Allegretto.
the passing
A
of time
moderate
into equal
tempo
units,
is described
the basic
as
unit
moderato.
of rhythm.
Slow as
Beats in
lento.
music,
Very
art
slow
music that
is
you're going to be hearing
grave.
this semester are
Looks like
sometimes
grave or
really
solemn.
easy to hear and sometimes harder to
Accelerando
make
means
out
the music begins to speed
orally.
up. The
So
beat starts to
I
speed
will
up,
be
actually.
making sure that if I ever ask you a question about rhythm,
retard
that
is when the music
beat is
slows
very
down.
clear.
I'm going to move along fairly quickly.
When
and
we
this may
hear
be a
pop
video
music
you
that
want to
has a
repeat
clear
if these
beat,
are
we
new terms
often
for you.
immediately respond by tapping
These
our
are all in
foot
Chapter
or
2
clapping.
in your ebook as well.
Sometimes we want to get up and move around to
Rhythm is the organization
real
of
catchy
time in music.
dance tune.
It provides
But
shape for
in
the
general,
melody,
just think about how we
and it
love
adds
to divide
energy
up
to the
time
melody,
as people.
divides
We love to
long
know how
spans
many
of
minutes
time
it's
into
going to be
smaller,
before our
organized
friend is
units,
ready, or how
and it
many
is the most
hours we're going to
fundamental
have to
element
work.
in music.
How many days
Let's take
until
a
the
look
end
at
of
this
the week,
video, and I want you to
and
notice
so on
the
and so
difference
forth.
when you
It's
listen to
just
the
our
music
human nature.
between the underlying
So
pulse
the
or
speed
beat
at which the
and the
beat is
different rhythms
happening
you're
in
going to
any
hear.
given
Also,
work of
notice
music
whether
is called the
the
tempo.
couple that is dancing is moving
We
to
divide
the beat
these up
or more the
into
rhythm,
lively,
which is changing units.
which is allegro.
Oops.
This term is Italian,
There we go.
and for some reason many years ago we decided that Italian terms for speed and many other musical elements were going to rule the day. So this was decided a long time before I came
South
along,
American
so
show dance
sorry about that.
champions Maxim Kochevnikov and
Lively
Yulia
is allegro,
Zagarichenko.
very fast is called presto. Fairly brisk means a little bit slower than those first two. Allegretto. A moderate tempo is described as moderato. Slow as lento. Very slow is grave. Looks like grave or solemn. A Accelerando means the music begins to speed up. The beat starts to speed up, actually.
Without rhythm, your heart
Retardando or retard is when the music slows down. I'm going to move along fairly quickly, and this may be a video you want to
Sometimes we
repeat
say,
because these are new
hip,
terms
hip,
for you.
chin, chin, the rhythm
These are
section.
all in Chapter 2 in your ebook as well. Rhythm is the organization of time in music. It provides shape
Now
to
samba
melody,
rhythm.
and it adds energy to
Very
melody.
quick rhythm, by the
It
way.
divides long spans of time into smaller,
Wow.
organized units, and it is the most fundamental element of music. Let's take a look at this video, and I want you to notice the difference when you listen to the music between
These are
the
the
underlying
rules
pulse
in
or
we call
beat
shadow position.
and the different rhythms you're going to hear. Also, notice whether the couple that is dancing
Changing
is
the
moving
rhythm
to
now,
the
and we're
beat
gonna
or
see
more the rhythm.
Most likely some
which is changing
cha-cha.
beats. Oops,
Chin, chin.
there we go.
Yep, cha-cha. Here we go.
Please welcome Max
Basic
and
swivels.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Turning, changing dance
for
positions.
Our United States professional Latin
Facing
champions
for,
and two-time
cha-cha.
world South American
Actions.
show dance champions, Maxim Kajevnikov and Yulia Zagoruchenko.
Now they're very clever at putting these little groupings together that show
I love the choreography.
the change of rhythm, how you use rhythm for your best advantage. The subject of tonight's lecture is
There are lots of videos of Max and Mila if you want to see any more. You can look them up on YouTube. But I noticed that it was very seldom that they were actually moving to just the beat. Often their feet were moving at twice the rate of the beat. But I'm hoping that even after a few moments of listening to the music, that you were noticing yourself tapping or feeling that underlying pulse to the music. That is the beat. So
now samba
when
rhythm.
we take beats,
Very quick
in
rhythm,
music,
by the way.
we have to put them into groups in
Wow.
order to write the music down. These groups are called meter. And when we have a group of beats, we put them together into a measure or a bar.
These are
of
the
music. If you see my
rules
cursor
in
here,
we call
it's
shadow
outlining
position.
these two quarter notes. They each last one beat. And the top
Changing the rhythm now, and we're going to see
number here is a
most
2,
likely
which
some
means there are two
cha-cha.
beats in each bar or measure of this meter. So we call that
cha-cha.
kind
Here
of a
we
meter
go.
a duple meter. We also call 4
Basic
4 times
swivels.
a duple meter. And
Turning,
it's just
changing
quite
dance
simply 1,
positions.
2, 1,
Facing
and
for
2
cha-cha.
So
Actions.
each of these pairs of beats here are twice as fast, and then these 4 beats are twice as fast as the 8s. But the underlying pulse stays the
Now
same.
they're very
So
clever
you hear
at
my
putting these
pulse,
little
1,
groupings together that
2,
show
I love the
1,
choreography.
and 2
the
each
change
time.
of rhythm, how
So
you use
here
rhythm
is a triple meter
for your best
for the
advantage.
third time, and I will go ahead and count to 3 for that. So 1, there are
2,
lots of
3,
videos of
1
Max and Mila
and
if you want to
2
see
and
any
3
more,
and
and look them up on YouTube.
And 4 4
But
time, 1.
I noticed
2,
that it was very
3,
seldom that they
4.
were actually
1
moving
and
to
2
just
and
the beat.
3
Often
and
their
4
feet were
and
moving
That's
at
just
twice
one
the
way
rate
that
of the
I
beat.
was
But
taught to
I'm
divide
hoping
up beats
that
so I could feel
even after a
each
few
part
moments
of
of
the beat.
listening to the music,
By
that
the way,
you
these
were
are
noticing
quarter notes.
yourself tapping
These
or
are eighth
feeling
notes,
that
and these are
underlying
16th notes.
pulse
You're not
to the
expected
music. That is
to
the
do
beat.
anything with these in this class, except you will notice that you're
So,
given a lot of music
when we take
to look at
beats
and the more
in music,
we have to put
that
them
you have
into
the notes
groups
beam
in order
together,
to write
and the
music
more
down.
beams there are, the
These
quicker
groups
the rhythm
are called meter.
So
And,
meter keeps
when we
everyone
have
together.
a
In
group
the
of beats,
choir,
we put them
in
together
the orchestra,
into a
in the
measure
band,
or a bar
of music.
In
If
the
you see my
dance
cursor
group,
here, it's
and
outlining
it's an essential
these two
structure for
quarter
art
notes.
music.
They each last one beat.
For example,
and the
if
top we didn't have a way
number
to
here
tell
is a
the
2,
cymbal
which means
player
there are
in the
2 beats
symphony
in each
that
bar or measure.
she has to
of
count
this meter.
about 5 minutes or
So
so
we
before
call
it's
that
time
kind of a
to
meter
play
a
her big
duple
cymbal
meter.
crash.
We also call 4/4
She would
duple
be
meter.
standing there wondering when
and
to do
it's
this.
just
But
quite simply
if
1,
she knows
2,
that she has 64
1,
bars of
and
rest,
2
and then
and
at the
a.
downbeat
So
of the 65th
each of
bar,
these pairs
she has a
of
big
beats
cymbal crash.
here are
It gives
twice
her
as
something she
fast,
can work with.
and then these 4
Dancers
beats are
as
twice
well.
as fast as the 8s.
If
but
you ever
the
go to a
underlying
dance
pulse
concert
stays the same.
or
So you hear
watch
my pulse,
any kind
1,
of street
2,
dancing,
1,
and there's
2 and
choreography that happens
so
together.
Here is a triple
The
meter.
dancers know exactly
3/4
when
time,
they're going to start,
and
they
I will
count bars
go
of
ahead
the
and
music
count
to
to
know
3
when
for
to
that.
begin
So
or end
1,
their choreography.
2, 3.
Conductors
1
standing
and
up on the
2
podium
and 3
are
and
beating
up.
time according to
And
meter.
4/4
So,
time.
if we
1,
look at this,
2,
this is a
3,
score,
4.
and it's the
1
sheet that the
and
conductor
2
has in
and
front of
3
him or
and
herself.
4 and
And you can see
that's
at the
just
top
one way that
these are
I
the
was taught
oboes,
to divide up
the
beats,
trumpets.
so I could feel each
a
part
lot of
the
these
beat.
appear in Italian too.
By the way, these
Violin,
are
viola,
quarter notes. These are eighth notes,
cello,
and these are
and bass.
16th
So
notes.
this
You're
is
not
actually a
expected
fairly
to
small
do anything
score
with these in
compared
this
to
class,
what a major
except you will
symphony
notice
orchestra
that
would
you're
have.
given a lot of
But
music
as we can see
to
here,
look
the
at,
busiest
and
rhythm
the
belongs
more,
to the second violin group.
that
and they
you
have
the
beamed
notes
that
together,
have 2
and the more
beams.
beams there are, the
the
quicker
C
the rhythm.
stands for 4/4 common time. So the
So
very,
meter
very
keeps
first measure,
everyone
everybody
together
is playing
in the
a whole note. So
choir,
they are
in the
holding
orchestra,
1,
in the
2,
band,
3, 4, and then they all
in the
move together
dance
to the
group.
downbeat here. 1,
And
2,
it's an essential
3, 4,
structure
and
for art
1,
music.
2, 3, 4,
For example,
and so on.
if
But
we
right
didn't
away,
have
the
a
second
way
violin
to
gets
tell the
busy
cymbal
doing a figure
player
that
in this
kind of sounds like
that
she has to count as an accompaniment. About 5 minutes or so before it's time to play her
the
big
beats
cymbal
within the
crash.
measure are pretty easy to understand.
She would be
because
standing
they're
there
so
wondering when
repetitive.
to do this.
The
But
downbeat
if she
is
knows
the first
that
beat
she
in
has
measure,
64
and
bars
it's
of
going
rest,
to
and
have
then at the
usually the
downbeat
most
of the
emphasis for
65th bar,
small
she has a
accent.
big cymbal crash,
and the
it gives her
conductor's
something she
baton
can work
moves
with.
down.
Dancers as well.
And at the bottom, that
if
is
you
beat
ever
1.
go to a dance
When
concert
they move
or
up to the
top,
watch
that's beat 2.
any kind of
and this is
street
sort of like a
dancing,
J stroke.
and
down,
there's
up,
choreography
down,
that happens
up.
together.
And so
The
the last
dancers
beat in
know
the measure
exactly
is
when
called the
they're going
upbeat.
to start,
And
so
they count
if
bars
it's
of
just got
the
2
music
beats
to know
in a
when
measure,
to
it's
begin
fairly
or
simple.
end
It's
their
down,
choreography.
up, down,
up.
If it's 3
Conductors
beats,
standing up on the
it's down,
podium
over,
are
up,
beating
down,
time
over,
according
up.
to meter. So
If
if we
it's
look
4
at
beats,
this is a
down,
score,
over, back,
and
up,
it's the
1,
sheet that the
2,
conductor has
3,
in front
up.
of him or herself.
And the pickup
And
beat
you can see
is
at the top,
just the
these are the
last
oboes,
beat before
the
any downbeat.
trumpets.
So a pickup can happen.
A lot of these appear in
just
Italian
about
too.
any meter.
Violin, viola,
As I mentioned
cello, and
in
bass. So
last
this
week's
is actually
material,
a fairly
small score
notation
compared
was
to what a major
something that
symphony
didn't
orchestra would
come
have along.
But
right
as
at
we can
first,
see
even
here, the
when
busiest rhythm belongs
people
to the
started
second
writing down
violin group.
melodies.
And they have
They
beamed notes
were
that have 2
kind
beams.
of getting
so,
the contours
the
going.
C stands
you
for
can see
4/4
here
common
that these are
time.
just different
So
shapes,
the very,
which
very
actually at
first measure,
different
everybody
shapes
is playing a whole
represented
note. So they are
different
holding
lengths of
1,
notes.
2,
But
3,
you can see
4,
there's
and
no
then they all
actual
move
meter
together
here.
to the downbeat here.
There's no
1,
bar
2,
lines going
3,
down
4, and
that are
1,
dividing things
2,
up. It's
3,
mainly
4,
just a group
and so
of
on.
notes. So you can see the
but right away, the
contour
second violin
of how
gets
high
busy
or
doing
low
a
each
figure
pitch
that
is.
kind of sounds
But
like
we're not really sure how long to hold
as an
individual
accompaniment,
notes.
especially in the very early days of music.
The beats within the measure
So,
are pretty
rhythmic
easy to
notation
understand
developed around
because
the
they're
12th
so
or
repetitive.
13th
The
century in
downbeat
Paris,
is the first beat in
and
the measure,
and it's going
the
to
whole
have
note
usually the most
is
emphasis or a small accent.
very simple. It looks kind of like an
And the
egg,
conductor's
an
baton
oval.
moves down,
And whenever I think
and
of a
at the
whole
bottom
note
that
in,
is beat
let's
1.
say 4/4 time.
When they move up to the
I
top,
think
that's beat 2.
hold the whole
And
note,
this is sort of like a
so
J stroke.
It's going for
down,
4 beats.
up, down,
half
up,
notes. Half
and so
note,
the last
half
beat in a
note,
measure is called the
quarter,
upbeat.
Quarter, quarter,
So
quarter.
if it's
eighth
just
note,
got
eighth
2
note,
beats in a
eighth note,
measure,
eighth
it's
note.
fairly simple. It's
And
down,
in 16ths,
up,
da 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 da
down,
da
up.
da 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 da
If it's
da
3
da
beats,
da da,
it's
but the
down,
beat
over,
has
up,
not
down,
changed.
over, up. If it's 4 beats, down, down,
So
over, back,
here
up,
is
1, 2,
a familiar
3, up.
song,
And
so that
the
you
pickup
can
beat
kind of follow
is just
along how
the
duple meter
last beat
looks and
before
feels.
any downbeat. So a
And
pickup
I'm
can
not a
happen
great singer,
in
but I'm
just
going to
about
sing
any
this song
meter.
for you. So
go ahead and try this with me. I want you
As
to
I mentioned
be clapping
in last week's
underlying
material,
beat. You can hear my clapping
notation
going
was
on.
something that didn't come
Doodle went
along
to
right at
town
first, even
riding
when
on a pony,
people started writing down
stuck a
melodies.
feather in his hat
They
and called it
were kind of getting the
macaroni.
contours
And so
going.
it's,
You can see here that these are
pretty
just
simple
different
and
shapes,
straightforward.
which actually at first different shapes
Let's look at
represented
3/4
different
meter,
lengths
3
of
beats per
notes.
measure.
But you
And
can see there's no actual
notice
meter
that once
here.
in a while
There's
in the
no
song,
bar lines
we
going
have a
down
note that doesn't
that are
happen
dividing
right on the
things
beat.
up.
It happens
It's mainly
between the
just
beat.
a group
That
of
is
notes.
called
So we can see the
syncopation.
contour
And
of
it
how
makes
high or low each
the
pitch is.
music a
But
little
we're
more
not
interesting.
really
So
sure how
let's
long to hold
try
individual
clapping.
notes. Here we
Especially
go.
in the very early days of music.
Country
So rhythmic notation developed around the 12th or 13th century in Paris, and the whole note is very
This
simple.
note
It looks
is
kind of
between
like
a
an
half
egg
note and a whole note.
an oval.
We take a half note
And
and put a dot
whenever
after
I
it,
think
and
of
it
a whole
increases
note
it
in, let's
by
say,
1/2
4/4 time,
or 1 beat.
there's a
think
lot of math
hold
in music
the
rhythm.
whole note, so it's going for 4 beats.
So
half
if
notes,
we are going to
half
hear
note,
meters,
half
we
note,
can
quarter,
actually
quarter,
try
quarter,
conducting
quarter,
together.
Eighth note, eighth note, eighth note,
And
then
it's a little
16ths.
harder to do with me not able to kind of show you the gestures, but
has not
if we were
changed.
going to conduct, we would
So
try
here
one,
is
a familiar
1,
song
2 with this little backwards
so that
J
you can
stroke.
kind of
1,
follow along
2.
how duple
And now
meter
let's try
looks and feels.
starting on
And
the
I'm not a
upbeat
great
as it
singer,
does,
but
so we're
I'm
going to
going to
start
sing the
going
song for you. So
2,
go ahead
1,
and
try
like that.
this with me. I want you to be clapping the underlying beat. You can hear my clapping going on.
And then we
Yankee
have
Doodle
another
went
upbeat
to
beginning
town
for
riding
the,
on a
the
pony,
3/4 time.
stuck a
in
feather
the beginning
in his
of
hat and called
the
it macaroni.
Star Spangled Banner. And so it's
It starts on beat 3.
pretty simple and straightforward.
Say, can you
Let's look
see
at
by
3/4
the
meter,
dawn's
3 beats per measure.
early
And
light?
that's all of that one
Notice
I can
that once
sing.
in a while in this song we
Next,
have
we
a
have
note
accents.
that doesn't happen right on the beat. It
There are
happens
natural
between
places
the
in the
beat.
music
that is
that
called feel right to have an
syncopation.
accent. If you look
And
at
it
example
makes
1,
the
you
music
can
a little more
see
interesting.
that
So
it's in
let's
4/4 time,
try
and we have a
clapping
little
here.
sideways
We
V. That's an
go.
accent. To play the note a little stronger, a little heavier than the notes around it. Not longer, stronger. So if I was going to just clap,
This note is between a
I
half
would
note
clap
and a
it
whole
like
note.
this.
We take a
1,
half note
2,
and put a dot
3,
after it,
4.
and it
You can hear
increases
how
it
it's
by
louder
1/2
on beats 1
or
and 3.
1 beat. There's
The
a lot of
unexpected
math
thing is
in
when we
music
put an
rhythm.
accent on beat 2, because 2
So
and 4 are the weaker
If we
beats
are
in the
going to
measure.
hear meters, we
That's just
can
a typical
actually
feeling.
try conducting
And so
together.
there's a rest. The swivel
Um,
there is a 1 beat
and
rest.
it's a little harder
quarter
to
rest.
do with me not
And
able
so
to
we're going
kind
to
of
come
show
in
you
on
the
beat 2 this
gestures.
time.
But
So 1, 2,
if we were
3,
going to
4,
conduct,
rest,
we
2, 3, 4.
would try
Now here's
1,
a true
2,
syncopation
1,
with
2 with
accents
this little
on
backwards
the ands
J stroke
of each
1,
beat. That's
2,
what the pluses stand
and now
for.
let's try. So it would go something
starting
like
on
this.
the upbeat as it does. So we're going to
and
start
2,
going
and
3
and
2
1.
So
like that.
again,
Oh,
1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and
spacious
skies.
And then exercise
then
4.
we have another upbeat.
We tie
beginning
notes
for
together,
and then we don't
3/4 time
start them again, but we
in
still
the
continue
beginning
to count
of
them.
these.
So this goes
Star Spangled
1
Banner.
and 2 and 3 and 4.
It starts on
and
beat 3.
Oh, say, can you
Syncopation.
see
I mentioned it a
by
little
the
bit before.
dawn's
That's when the
early
accent is on the weak beat,
light?
or
That's
perhaps
all of that one
between
I can
beats.
sing. It creates a feeling of being
Next,
off
we
the
have
beat.
accents.
It gives the music an
There are
unexpected
natural
balance
places
or
in the music
energy
that
feel right to have an accent. If you look
It's
at
often
example
heard in jazz,
1,
Latin music, and
you
hip
can
hop.
see that it's
But
in
it's
4/4
actually
time
everywhere
and we have a
when you look
little
for it.
sideways V. That's
So
an
look at
accent.
the beginning
to
of
play
Lucy
the
in the
note
Sky
a
with
little
Diamonds.
stronger.
It starts out
a little heavier
1
than the
and
notes
2
around
and
it.
3
Not
and
longer,
4 and,
stronger.
whoops, it's in 2.
So
1 and
if
2
I was
and
going
1
to
and 2
just,
and 1
clap
and
this,
2.
I would clap it like this. 1, 2,
So
3,
syncopation
4.
is when we're
You can hear
moving
how
between
it's
the beats,
louder
or
on beats
weak
1 and
beats.
3. The unexpected thing is when we put an accent
So
on
we put
beat
it all together,
2,
you can see
because 2
that
and 4, the weaker
on
beats
the bottom
in the
line
measure,
here,
these quarter notes indicate
that's
that
just
each
the
measure
typical
of the
feeling.
bass line
And
has
so
a
there's
quarter
a
note.
rest.
So
The
that's
squiggle there
ticking
is
along at
a
a very
one
steady
beat rest, quarter rest.
rate. And so we're going
the
to
middle
come in on
line
beat
here
2 this
has
time. So
a
1,
chord
2
with whole
3,
notes,
4, rest,
then
2,
some chords
3,
with half
4.
notes, and then quarter
Now
note
here's
chords,
a true
and then it
syncopation with
moves in a
accents on
syncopated
the
way
ands
on
of
the
each beat.
and
That's what the
of
pluses stand for.
beat 4.
So it would go something like this.
So the quickest
1
rhythm is
and
actually
2
up here on
and
top.
3
You
and.
can see the eighth notes
So
moving along.
again, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. All right.
Next we come to melody.
And then
all of those
exercise
terms
4.
had to do with counting and rhythm.
We tie notes together, and then we
Melody,
don't
a series
start
of
them again,
notes
but we still continue
forming
to count
a
them.
distinctive,
So this
recognizable
goes
unit.
1
Melody
and 2
can produce
and
an
3
overwhelming
and
emotional
4
experience. And melody is the lyrical
Syncopation
character
of music.
I mentioned it a little bit before. That's when the accent is on the weak beat, or perhaps
When
between
we
beats.
describe
It creates
melodies,
a
we're going
feeling
to
of
have to
being off
use
the beat.
some
It gives the
vocabulary
music
this
an
semester.
unexpected
Bounce or
Pitch
energy
is the relative position, high or low, of a
It's
musical
often
sound.
heard in
So
jazz, Latin
the pitch
music,
we
and
might
hip-hop,
hear a flute playing is going to
but
be a
it's
higher
actually
pitch
everywhere
than the pitch that a
when you look
tuba
for it.
might play. Should be
So
quite
look
low
at the
in
beginning of
bass
Lucy in the
range.
Sky with Diamonds.
The
It
interval
starts out
is a distance
1
between
and
any
2
two
and
notes
3
or
and
pitches.
4 and
So
it's
a
in 2.
perfect fourth
1
spans
and
4
2
notes. If we look
and
down
1
here
and
from
2
C to F,
and 1 E and 2.
1, 2, 3, 4 is 4 musical
So
letters.
syncopation is
from
when
the
we're moving
alphabet.
between the beats
And
or
a
on
perfect
weak
fourth
beats.
sounds like "Here comes the bride."
So we put it all together. You
and
can see
a perfect fifth
that
spans 5 letters.
on the bottom line here, these quarter notes
Twinkle,
indicate that each measure of the bass
C,
line has a quarter note.
G.
So that's ticking along at a very steady
And a very
rate.
close interval is just a step.
The middle line here has
La,
a chord
la,
with
la,
whole notes,
la, la,
then some
C,
chords
D,
with
E,
half
D,
notes, and then
C.
quarter note chords, and then it moves in a syncopated way.
I hope
on
you
the
have
end
access in
of
your life somewhere
beat 4.
to a keyboard or a piano.
So the quickest
because
rhythm is actually up
you
here
might
on
want
top.
to try out
You
some of
can
the
see
things
the
you're
eighth
learning
note
this
semester,
semester,
just messing around with the keyboard. And this person is
Next,
spanning
we come to
with
melody.
their
All of
hand
those
an
terms had to
octave.
do with counting and rhythm. You'll notice that the piano has, of course, lots of white
Melody,
keys,
a
and then
series
it's
of
interspersed
notes
with some black keys,
a
and
distinctive,
they're grouped in groups of
recognizable unit.
threes. Skip,
Melody can
and
produce
then
an
twos.
overwhelming emotional
Skip.
experience.
So 3,
And
skip,
melody
2,
is
skip,
the
and so on,
lyrical
all the way up the
character of
piano.
music.
If we didn't have this arrangement, we wouldn't be able to tell the difference between different
When we
notes.
describe
melodies,
one
we're
of the
going
first
to have to use
things somebody learns in their
some
very first
vocabulary
piano
this
lesson is
semester.
that you look to the
Pitch
left of two
is
black
the relative
keys,
position,
and
high
that
or
note
low of
is
a musical
called
sound.
C.
So the pitch we might hear
So,
a flute playing
counting down
is going
from
to be
that
a higher
C,
pitch than the
we go
pitch
down
that
in
a
the
tuba
musical
might
alphabet.
play.
C,
Should be quite low
B,
in the bass
A.
range.
I'm ignoring the
The
black
interval
keys.
is
and
a
there's
distance
no H
between
in
any
music,
two notes.
so we go down to
or pitches.
G.
So
G,
a perfect fourth
A,
spans
B,
4 notes. If we
C,
look down here
D,
from C to F,
E, F,
1,
G.
2, 3,
This
4
person's thumb is on one
is
G,
4
and the
musical
other- and
letters
the pinky
in
is
the alphabet.
on the G below it. So
And
that's called an
a perfect
octave.
fourth
It spans
sounds like
8
"Here
notes.
comes the bride."
The octave is the distance between
and
the
a
first
perfect
and
fifth
the eighth
spans
note of a
5
scale.
letters.
So C up
Twinkle,
to the next C,
twinkle,
D up to the next D, etc.
C, C, G,
All
G.
cultures around the world use the octave, but
and
they divide
a
it
very
differently
close
depending on the
interval
music.
is just a step. La,
So,
la,
the pitch
la,
A
la,
can
C,
occur
D,
at
E,
440
D,
vibrations per
C.
second. That would be the A above middle C, kind of the middle range in the piano.
I hope you have access in
the
your life
A
somewhere
one
to
octave higher
a keyboard
is
or a piano
880 vibrations
because
per
you
second.
might want to
Because
try
it's a
out some of
factor
the
of
things you're
2.
learning this semester. Just
The reason
around
why
with the keyboard.
A's sound so much
and
alike
this
is
person
that their
is
sound waves
spanning
look
with their
almost
hand an octave.
identical, except
You'll
the
notice that
lower
the piano has,
the A,
of course, lots of white
there's
keys,
going
and
to
then it's
be,
interspersed with
a
some black keys.
longer wave
and they're
at the
grouped
bottom.
in groups of threes, skip,
So if we
and then
go
twos.
down from
Skip.
440
so 3
vibrations
skip,
per second,
2, skip, and so on,
we're
all the
going
way
to
up the
have
piano.
how many vibrations per second?
If we didn't have this arrangement, we wouldn't be able to
220,
tell
right.
the difference between different notes. So one of the first
this is one way that we
learns in
can
their
think
very first
about
piano lesson
shapes of
is that you
melodies.
look to the left
Melodies
of two black
tend
keys,
to
and that
go
note
up
is
or
called
down like
C.
a ladder, or they
So,
skip around.
Counting down from that C,
Melody
go
doesn't
down in the
skip
musical
around a
alphabet.
whole lot
C,
at once,
B,
but
A.
let me show you a
the black
popular
keys.
song you may have sung this
And
summer
there's
if you
no
went to
H
the
in
ballpark.
music, so we go down to
And
G.
the very first two
So
notes
G,
are an octave apart.
A, B, C.
So they're
D,
quite
E,
far apart
F,
here on this contour.
G.
This person's
And
thumb
then we
is
kind
on
of
one
have a little
G,
skip,
and the
and
other
a
step,
step,
pinky
and a
is
skip
on the G below it. So that's called
There's
an
a step
octave.
here,
It
and then another
spans
octave.
8 notes.
Excuse me.
The octave is the distance
try to
between
sing
the
this.
first and the eighth note
Take
of a scale.
me
So
out
C
to the
up to the next C,
ball game.
D up to
Take
the next D,
me
etc.
out to the crowd.
All cultures around the world use the octave, but they
so
divide
that
it differently
is
depending on their
kind
music.
of
a wide-ranging melody.
So
But a lot of
the
melodies
pitch A
can occur
much more
at
like a
440
string of
vibrations
beats.
per second. That would be the A
So
above middle C.
this is the
kind of
ode to
middle
joy.
range in the piano.
La la la.
The A
la,
one
la,
octave
la,
higher
la,
is
la,
880
la,
vibrations per
la,
second
la,
because it's a factor of 2.
La, 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 la,
The
la,
reason why
la,
A's
la,
sound so much
la,
alike
la,
is that their sound
There's
waves look
no leaps or
almost
skips in that melody at
identical,
all.
except the lower the A,
So
there's going to be
notation
a longer wave at the bottom.
began to develop around the year 800 Christian
So
era.
if we go down from
so that
440
the thousands of
vibrations per
melodies that
second,
had been
we're going to have
composed
how many
for
vibrations per second?
Catholic Church
220,
rituals and masses could be actually written down.
So this is one
and
way that we can
preserved
think about
and,
shapes of melodies.
unaltered.
Melodies
perhaps,
tend because
to
if somebody taught
go up or
the
down
next
like
person
a
the
ladder,
melody slightly wrong,
or they
then it's
skip
altered
around
forever if nobody remembers the old way. to
melody
sing it.
doesn't skip around a whole lot at once, but
We
let me
use
show
a
you
staff
a
to put
popular
our
song
notes
you may have sung
on
this summer
to
if you went to
indicate
the ballpark.
position of how
And the
high
very
or low
first two notes are an
the
octave
music is.
apart. So they're quite
Usually we also
far
have
apart
a
here on
clef
this
here
contour.
that tells us how
And then
high
we
or
kind of have a
low
little skip and a
the
step.
instrument
and a
is
skip.
playing it, as well as how
There's
to
a step
read
here
each note.
and then another octave. But
Excuse me.
you can see here that
I'll try
this
to sing
first
this.
note is on the second
Take
space.
me out to
The next
the
one's on the third
ball
line, and it's just
game.
going up a
Take
step at a
me
time.
out to the crowd.
So the note heads and flags show different durations and rhythms.
So that is kind of a wide-ranging melody, but a lot of
clef
melodies
indicates the range of
are
pitches. The treble
much more
clef
like
is
a
a higher
string
clef
of
than the
beats.
bass clef, which is used maybe
So
for
this
the
is
cello
the ode to
or the
joy.
double bass or
La,
the tuba.
la, 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 la,
You can see that the
la,
piano
la,
uses
la,
bass
la,
clef
la, la,
and
la,
treble clef.
la, la,
And
la,
there are
la,
going to be
la,
times
la,
coming
la,
up in the next few
la,
weeks where you're going to have to be
la,
listening to
la,
music
la, la.
carefully. And
There's
you're going to have
no
to
leaps or
decide if
skips
it's
in
being
that
played on
melody
the
at all.
piano. If it's a high sound, it's being played with
So,
the right hand, because the further to the right, the
notation
higher the pitch.
The
Began
low
to develop
sounds
around the year
are
800
on the
Christian
left
era.
hand.
So that the thousands of melodies that had
move
been
in some
composed
interesting
for
ways and different ways.
Catholic Church
Conjunct
rituals
motion
and
is
masses
the stepwise
could
movement
be
of
actually
music.
written
So
down.
the melody
and
I was singing
preserved
earlier
and,
that was like
a
string of
unaltered,
beads
perhaps,
is called
because
Ode
if
to
somebody
Joy.
taught
and
the
it
next
moves very
person
much
the melody slightly
like
wrong, then it's altered forever if nobody
scale
remembers
going
the
up
old
and
way
down.
to sing it. And if we look,
we use a
at the
staff
bottom
to
example,
put
we
our
have,
notes
and
on
by the way,
to
that's called
indicate
conjunct
position
motion of how high
If we're
or
going to
low
have a lot of leaping
music is.
movements in the music, we call that disjunct.
Usually we
motion.
also have a clef here
So
that tells us
here
how
is a
high
very
or
disjunct
low
melody. The instrument
Bum,
is just
bum,
playing
bididum,
it as
bum,
well
bididum,
as how to
bum,
read each
bididum,
note.
bum, ba-dum.
Reveille.
But you can see
Melodies
here that
are going
this
to almost
first note
always
is on the
combine
second space.
conjunct and disjunct
Next one's
motion.
on the third
so
line,
I might
and it's
ask you
just
to be
going up a
listening to
step at a
something
time.
for class, and I'll say,
So
is
the
this
note heads and
more
flags show
conjunct
different
or more
durations
disjunct?
and rhythms.
And so you kind of have to use your own judgment on that.
A
One
clef
style will
indicates the
typically
range of
dominate
pitches.
in any
The
given
treble
melody.
clef is a higher clef than the bass clef, which is used
Next,
maybe for
we're going to take
the cello
notes and
or
put
the double
them
bass
together in
or
a
the
pattern.
tuba. You can see that the
you
piano
may already know what a
uses
scale
bass
is,
clef,
but if you don't, here we
and
go.
treble
A
clef.
scale ascends and
there are going to be
descends
times
in an
coming up in the next
unvarying
few weeks
pattern.
where you're going to have to be listening to music
A mode
carefully,
is a term
and you're going to have to
describing
decide
the general
if it's being
type
played
of
on the
scale,
piano,
like the
if
major
it's a
mode
high
versus
sound,
the minor
it's being
mode.
played with the right hand.
Major and
'cause
minor
the further
scales
to the right,
are used
the higher
in
the
almost
pitch.
all Western
The low
melodies. That
sounds
means
are
developed
in the West, developed in Europe.
melodies move in
some
some
melodic systems in Africa
interesting
are like this
ways
also,
and different
and
ways.
in the Americas.
Conjunct motion is the stepwise movement
step.
of music. So the melody
step
I was
is
singing
usually
earlier
the distance
that was
between
like
adjacent
a string of
notes of a
beads
scale,
is called Ode
and
to
they
Joy.
suggest a
And
ladder of
it
distinct
moves very
pitches.
much like
Scale steps are specific
a
notes of a
scale
scale,
going up and down, like
do, re, mi,
and
fa, sol, la, ti,
if
do.
we look at the bottom
or
example,
A,
we
B,
have,
C,
and by the way, that's called
D, E,
conjunct
F,
motion.
G, A.
If we're going
The
to
first
have a lot of
scale I
leaping
sang
movements
was
in the
a
music,
major
we call
mode
that disjunct
scale, and the
motion.
second one was in the minor mode.
So, believe it
here
or
is a
not,
very
I grew up
disjunct,
in the
melody.
60s in a musical
Bum,
family
bum,
that
bididum,
loved
bum,
gathering
bididum,
around the
bim,
piano
bum, bididum,
to sing
bum,
for fun.
ba-dum.
Reveille.
I wish we had some public
melodies
pianos
are going
like
to almost
the one
always
you're going to hear
combine conjunct
in our
and disjunct
city
motion
to encourage more
so
people
I might
to have
ask
fun
you to be
exploring
listening
music.
to something for class, and I'll say, is this more conjunct or more disjunct? And so you kind of have to use your own judgment on that. One style will typically dominate in any given melody. Next, we're going to take notes and put them together in a pattern. You may already know what a scale is, but if you don't, here we go. A scale ascends and descends in an unvarying pattern. A mode is a term describing the general type of scale, like the major mode versus the minor mode. Major and minor scales are
Sure
used
looks like
in
a lot of
almost
fun to
all
me.
Western melodies. That means developed in the West, developed in Europe.
So back to
A lot of
Oh, no.
melodic systems in
lost
Africa
our
are like
place.
this also, and in the Americas.
Sorry for this. It's going to take a moment.
So step.
A
A
compelling
step is
incentive to
usually
take
the
the
distance
stairs
between
instead of the
adjacent
escalator.
notes. of
Sorry
the
about
scale.
this.
And they suggest a ladder of distinct
Back
pitches.
to it.
Scale steps
So
are
the
specific notes
smallest
of a scale,
distance or interval
like
is called
do, re,
half
mi,
step.
fa, sol, la, ti, do. The distance
Or
between two
A, B,
adjacent
C,
notes of the chromatic
D,
scale
E,
are
F,
all going to be half
G,
steps.
A.
The first
The distance between two
scale I
adjacent
sang
notes
was a
on the
major
keyboard are half step.
mode scale, and the second one was in the minor mode.
And so, if you look
Believe
here
it or not, I grew up
these two
in
white
the
keys are
60s
right
in
next
a
to each
musical
other. They are a
family
half step
that
apart.
loved gathering around the
The
piano
next two
to
white
sing
keys
for fun.
are separated by a black key.
I wish we
and
had
that
some
black
public
key
pianos
is a
like
half
the
step
one
up
you're going to hear
from the one white
in
note
our city
and
to
a half
encourage more
step
people to have
down
fun
from the next
exploring
white key.
music. So if we're going to move by chromatic scale, we would go half step, half step, half step, half step, half step. Whole step is the most common interval in diatonic scales, meaning just C major scale is the regular notes of the C major scale. So you can see between C and D, there are two half steps, and that equals one whole step. If there is one note between the D and the E, that means it's a whole step too. But the E and the F are a half step apart, and the B and the C also.
Sure looks like a lot of fun to
I
me.
mentioned earlier there's no H in music, so all of the notes that you look at on the 88 keys
So
of
back
piano
to
are some kind of
PowerPoint.
A, B, C,
Oh, no.
D, E, F, or G.
We lost our place. Sorry
Some
for
teaching
this. It's going
systems
to take a
also
moment.
use do, re, mi, or they don't even use ABC.
A compelling incentive to take the
That is called
stairs instead of the escalator.
Sorry about this.
Accidental notes.
Back to it.
These
So
occur
the
in
smallest
music
distance
to
or
give us a
interval
note that isn't
is
in the
called
natural
half
key.
step.
Sometimes we use it to show what
The distance
a
between two
D major
adjacent
scale
notes
looks
of
like
the chromatic
fully
scale are
spelled
all
out
going to be
for
half
people
steps.
also. The distance
And
between
so
two
if you
adjacent
see
notes
a
on the
note
keyboard are
beside,
half step. One of these symbols,
And so
those are
if you
called
look here
accidentals, and that's a
at
change.
these two
So when
white
we
keys
take
are
an
right
A
next to
and
each
we
other,
make it
they
a
are
half step
apart.
lower,
we put this
next
kind of
two white
squished
keys
B
are separated
beside
by
it
a black
to the left,
key.
and that makes the
And
note
that
sound a
black
half step
key
lower.
is a half step up.
If you want the
from
note
the
to be a
one
half step higher,
and
we put
a
this
half
little
step down from the next white key.
like pound sign.
So if
and
we're going
that
to
makes
move
the
by
note sound a
chromatic
half step
scale,
higher.
we would go
Also,
half
this
step,
cancels
half step,
out
half
any
step,
sharp
half step,
or
half
flat.
step.
It's called a natural sign. Whole step
So
is
major
the most
and minor
common
scales.
interval in
The major
diatonic
scale
scales,
is
meaning
a
just
7-note scale.
C major
The
scale
eighth
is the
pitch
regular
repeats
notes of
the
the
first
C major
one.
scale.
And the order
So you
of
can see
half
between
and whole
C
steps is
and
identical
D,
for all
there
12
are 2 half steps
major
and that
scales.
equals 1 whole step.
And
If there's
often,
one note between
if something
the D
is
and the
in
E,
a major
that
key,
means it's a whole step
going
too.
to sound
But the
happy
E and the F are a half step
or
apart, and the D
peaceful
are the
to
and the
our
C
ears also.
So here is a scale. And
I mentioned earlier there's no
let's
H in
see,
music.
C,
So all of the notes that you look at on the 88 keys of piano are some kind of A, B, C, D, E, F,
and
or G.
if we make a few changes
some
from the
teaching
whole
systems
half,
also
whole,
use
whole,
do,
whole,
re,
half
mi,
pattern, or
and
they
change
don't
it
even
to
use ABC.
whole,
Everything
half,
is do, re,
whole,
mi.
whole,
But
half,
that is
whole,
called
whole.
solfege. Then we're making a minor scale. There's actually several kinds of minor scales.
Accidental
but
notes.
all the minor scales have this in
These
common. They
occur
all
in
start
music
like
to give us a note that isn't in the
whole,
natural key.
half,
Sometimes
right there.
we use
That's
it
to
to
give
show
away that
what
we're in the minor mode.
D
The minor
major
mode is
scale looks
often
like
considered
more
to
fully
be spelled out for people also.
sad,
And
mysterious.
so if you see a note beside one of these symbols, those are called accidentals, and that's a change. So when we take an A and we make it a half step lower, we put this kind of squished B beside it to the left, and that makes the note sound a half step lower. If you want the note to be a half step higher,
The
put this
mode
little,
describes whether we're
like
thinking
pound
about
sign,
a major
and
scale
that
or a
makes the
minor
note
scale.
sound
It
a
tends
half
to be a
step higher.
pretty easy thing for my students to pick up
this
if they haven't
cancels
already
out
learned it.
any
You're
sharp
probably going
or
to pick
flat.
this right
It's
up.
called a natural.
Chromatic scale is a little more difficult to hear, but
So major and minor
it
scales.
uses all
The
12
major scale
pitches
is a 7-note
of
scale. The 8th
an
pitch
octave.
repeats the
Okay,
first
so
one.
here's our octave
And the
between C
order
and C.
of
And so
half
instead of
and
an
whole steps
8-note
is
scale, we're going to have
identical
a
for all
12-note
12.
scale.
So
So
let's see if I can do this
major
without sitting at a
scales.
piano.
And often, if something is in a major key, it's going to sound happy or peaceful to our ears. So a chromatic scale
here is a scale
from the Greek word
and
chroma
it goes,
for color,
let's see,
and it's
C,
considered a very colorful
whole,
scale,
whole,
and it's
half,
often used for
whole,
special
whole,
effects.
half.
You would almost
And
never
if
have
we make
a
a few
song that's
changes,
just written
from the whole, whole, half, whole,
scale.
whole, half pattern, and
So let's
change
take
it
a
to
little bit
whole,
half,
whole,
closer
whole,
look
half, whole,
at
whole.
how we would
Then we're
build
making
our
a
own
minor
major
scale. There's
scales.
actually several
So on the
kinds of
piano,
minor
the
scales,
easiest one
but
begins
all
on
the
C
minor
and
scales
climbs like
have
a ladder
this
up
in
to the
common.
next
They
C.
all start
And
like
because of the
la,
arrangement of half steps and whole steps on the piano, we don't have to play
right
any
there.
of
That's
black
the
keys,
giveaway
just
that
the
we're
white
in the
keys.
minor
And I
mode.
have to remember,
The minor
oh,
mode
which
is
black key
often
did I have to
considered
play
to
for
be
the scale?
sorrowful.
So the C scale is just simply like this.
Mysterious C,
D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Pretty easy peasy. And if you
or
look,
it might also be
whole
a
step
different one that goes
between C and D, whole step between D and E, half step between E and F, whole, half, and we've finished our scale. The mode describes whether
let's
we're
start
thinking about a
on D
major
and
scale
make a
or a
whole-
minor scale. It tends
whole
to be a
half
pretty
note
easy
pattern.
thing for my students
D
to pick
to
up if
E
they haven't
is
already
whole.
learned it. You're
E
probably
to
going to
F
pick this
is
right
a
up.
half step, and we need 2
Chromatic
whole steps.
scale is a
So
little
we're
more
going
difficult to
go
hear,
whole,
but
whole. So there
it uses
there is
all
an F sharp in
12
the scale.
pitches.
Then we
of
change back to half
an
between
octave.
F sharp and G.
Okay, so here's our octave
half,
between
and
C
then
and C.
whole,
And so
whole,
instead of
and
an
then another
8-note
whole, so we
scale,
go to
we're going to
C
have
sharp,
a 12-note scale.
and then
So
half on
let's see
D.
if I can do this without sitting
Let's
at a
do
piano.
one more.
G major. This might be on our test, just saying. So G to A is a whole, A to B is a whole, B to C is a half. So a chromatic scale
whole
is from the Greek word chroma
is sharp
for color,
You can see down here,
and it's considered a
the
very
sharp over
colorful
F sharp.
scale.
So
And it's
the G
often
major
used
scale,
for
G,
special
A, B,
effects.
C, D,
You
E,
would
F sharp,
almost
G.
never have a song that's just written in
Now
moving on to the
chromatic
third group
scale.
of terms for this chapter.
So let's take a little
Tonality,
bit
which is
of
sometimes
a
called the
closer
key.
look at how
the
we
organization
would build
of music
our
around
own
major
central
scales.
pitch.
So on the
home
piano, the
bass
easiest
pitch
one
in any
begins on
key,
C
like
and
C
climbs like a
major
ladder
or
up to
G
the next
major,
C.
is going
And
to be
because of the
the
arrangement
name
of half
of
steps and
that
whole steps on the piano
key.
we don't
So
have to play
C major,
any of the black
the home
keys,
bass
just
pitch
the white
is
keys. And I have
C,
to remember, which
and
black key
it
did I have
feels
to
like
play
a
for the
restful
scale?
place or
So the
chord to
C
land
scale
on,
is just simply like this,
and we call that the
C,
tonic.
D, E,
Modulation
F, G, A,
is when we have a
C.
musical move to a different
Pretty easy
tonal
peasy.
center.
And if you look,
If all music
whole
just
step
stayed in the same
between
key,
C
it
and
would be
D,
very boring.
whole step
so even
between
an
D and
entire
E,
symphony that
half
may
step
be
between
called
E and F,
Schubert's Symphony
whole,
in B flat,
whole,
it moves around
half,
all
and
the
we finished
time,
our scale.
back and forth between different
Now,
keys.
let's start on D.
And
Much
make a whole-
the way
whole
that
half
planets
note
rotate
pattern.
around and are pulled
So
toward
D
the
to E
sun in an
is
orbit.
whole.
Outline
F
pitches are
is a
pulled
half step,
toward the
and we
tonic
need
pitch.
two
They
whole
want to
steps.
eventually
So
resolve.
we're going to go
whole. So there
now, a
is
musical
an
phrase
F sharp in this
is
scale.
basically the
Then we
equivalent
change
of
back to half
a musical
between F sharp and
sentence.
G.
So
Half, and then
it's
whole,
a section or
whole,
self-contained
and we need another
portion
whole,
of
so
a
we go to
melody.
C sharp.
It
and then
functions
half
a
on
lot
D.
like a dependent phrase or clause.
Let's do one more.
In grammar.
G major.
Musicians
This might
actually
be on our
identify
test
phrases
just
by
saying.
lowercase letters.
So G to A is a
So
whole,
A is
A
the
to
first
B is a whole,
phrase, B
to
is the
C
second,
is a half,
and so on.
and then whole.
If a phrase
another whole,
repeats,
so
the letter
F
is
is
used
sharped.
again.
You can see down here.
So what we're
the
thinking
sharp
about here is a
over
little bit
F
about
sharp.
the shape
So,
of music.
the G major scale,
It's kind
G,
of hard
A,
to
B,
describe
C,
something
D,
that we can't
E,
see
F sharp,
as
G.
having shape, but believe it or not, music
Now moving on to the third
has
group of terms for this
forms
chapter.
that are
Tonality,
very logical,
which is sometimes
if
called
you
the
have some
key.
traditional pop songs that you
The
listen
organization of music around
it
a
has
central
often
pitch. A
the
verse,
home bass pitch in any
which
key like
changes and
C
has
major
different
or
words,
G
and then
major
there's a
is
chorus
going
that
to
might
be
repeat
the name
and
of that
intermittently throughout.
and
key.
so that is the
C
shape
major
or form
the home bass
of a
pitch
basic pop
is
song.
C.
and it feels like a restful
Let's take a look at
place
Ode
or
to Joy.
chord to land on.
We can
And we
describe
call
this
that
theme
the
as
tonic.
A, B, C, B, which means
Modulation
that
is when we have a
it has
musical
two
move
sections
to a different
that
tonal
are
center.
alike.
If
and
all
two
music
sections
just
that are
stayed in the
different from
same
it.
key, it would be very
So,
boring. So
I'll
even an entire
sing on
symphony
laws
that may
again.
be called Schubert's Symphony in B flat, it moves around all the time, back and forth between different keys.
First time we've heard it, we're going to call that A.
Much
It starts
the
the same, but
in
it
the way
ends
that
differently.
planets rotate around and are pulled toward the sun in an orbit. Outline pitches are pulled toward the tonic pitch. They want
so
to
let's
eventually
call that
resolve.
B. Now this is completely
Now,
different.
a musical phrase is basically the equivalent of a musical sentence. So
That's
it's
the
a
C
section or
and
self-contained
then
portion of a melody.
It
It functions a lot like a dependent phrase or clause in grammar. Musicians
So
actually
the
identify
second and
phrases
fourth
by
lines are
lowercase
both
letters.
B.
So A is
And here's
the
one
first
of my favorites.
phrase.
The
B
theme
is
for the
second.
Flintstones, which is A,
and so
A,
on.
B, A. So,
If a phrase repeats, the letter is used again. So what we're thinking about here is a little bit about the shape.
Then we're going to
of
repeat
music.
it. So that's
Kind
gonna be
of hard
A
to
a second
describe
time.
something that we can't
Bum,
see
bum,
as
bum,
having shape, but believe it or not,
slightly
music
different, but we're still going to call
has
it A. Then
forms that are very logical. If you have some traditional pop songs that you
there's our
listen
B
to,
section, and then
it has often
it goes back to the A
a
verse
verse, which changes and has
I
different
won't ask you
words,
to
and
do
then
this a
there's
whole lot,
chorus
but you're
that
going
might
to
repeat
see this in the book a lot.
and intermittently
And
throughout.
it's
And so that is
something
the
to
shape or
challenge
form
some of you
a
who
basic pop
already
song.
have musical experience to start identifying.
Let's take a look at
where
Ode to Joy.
phrases are
We can describe this theme
novel
as
or
A,
different
B, C, B,
than
which
other
means
material around them.
that it has
A
two
motive
sections that are
is
alike
shorter than an actual melody.
and two sections that are
although
different
we
from
can
it.
use a motive
So,
to build
I'll
melody.
Sing on laws
A
again.
motive is a short, distinctive melodic gesture. If you've already done chapter 1, which you should
First
have
time
by
we've heard
now,
it, we're going to call that
you
A.
are pretty familiar with.
It starts
short,
the
short,
same, but it
long,
ends differently.
Short, 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 long. And these motives by Beethoven are identical. They just
So let's
one
call
starts
that
slightly
B.
lower. But you can see
Now, this is
immediately
completely
how
different.
the violins, after that first amazing moment where Beethoven grabs
That's
us
the C
and
section.
says, hey, you
And
need to
then
listen to this, it's important.
You
You can see how the motive, short, 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 long, short, 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 long, short, 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 long,
So the
is
second and fourth
extended
lines
together
are
to
both
create
beat.
a melody.
And here's one of my favorites.
The theme for the Flintstones, which is A-A-B-A. So, and so on. Harmony is what happens when we get other notes besides the melody
A a second time.
So when we have multiple pitches sounding together,
slightly different, but we're still
we
going to call it
create
A.
harmony.
Then
Harmony provides support and an accompaniment for the melody.
There's our
It
B
adds
section,
depth and
and then
richness to the music.
it goes back to the A
If I'm in a
theme
face-to-face class at this point, it's really easy for me
I
to
won't
show
ask you to do this a
how
whole lot, but you're
this
going to
song
see
by
this in
John
the book a
Lennon,
lot.
and
It's
is probably
something to challenge some
a
of
classic
you who
rock
already
song,
have musical
not
experience,
because
to
of its
start
fabulous
identifying
melody,
where
because the
phrases
melody
are
is pretty
novel or different
simple.
than other material
It
around.
just goes like this. Here it is.
love,
A motive
love,
is shorter than an
love,
actual melody,
love,
although we can use a motive to build melody. A motive is a short, distinctive melodic gesture.
When the
If you've
accompanying
already
figure is added, especially
done
because it has
chapter
the
1,
little
which you should have by now, you are pretty familiar with short, short,
when
short,
this is
long,
happening and a little bit of
short, short, short,
syncopation,
long, and these motives by Beethoven are identical. They just one starts slightly lower.
love. All of a sudden,
But
it
you can
starts
see
to become more
immediately
interesting.
how
And
the
it's because
violins,
of
after that
harmony.
first amazing moment where Beethoven
A chord is two or more
grabs
pitches
us
sounding at the
and
same
says,
time.
hey, you need
The
to listen to this.
basic
It's
chord
important.
in Western music is called a triad.
You can see how the
and,
motive,
the
short,
word
short,
tri
short, long,
kind of
short,
gives
short,
away the
short,
fact
long,
that
short,
there's
short, short,
usually
long,
3 notes in a
is
triad.
extended
There's
together
going
to
to be
create
3
a
pitches
melody.
and a specific
melody.
pattern.
And the triads consist of 2 intervals of a third stacked up on top of each other, and so on. We count. This happens to be an F. So the
Harmony is what happens when we get other notes besides the melody involved.
Okay.
So when we have multiple
and
pitches sounding
F to A
together,
spans 3 musical letters. So we call that a third.
harmony.
And A to C
Harmony
spans 3 letters
provides
in the alphabet also.
support and an accompaniment for the melody.
And
it adds
arpeggio
depth and richness
when
to the
we
music.
take a chord,
If I'm in a
and
face-to-face
instead of
class
sounding
at
it
this
all
point, it's
together
really easy for me
as
to
one
show
unit,
how
we
this song
break
by
it
John
up and
Lennon
stagger it, and
is probably
play it sequentially.
a classic
So,
rock song, not because of its fabulous melody, because the melody is pretty simple. It just goes like this. Here it is.
and so forth
Are ways that we can break up chords and play them one note at a time. And they'll have sort of a melodic contour at that point, but we still hear the chord. But when the accompanying figure is added, especially because it has the little, which I already mentioned, built on one, the very strong
when this is
home bass
happening
of each
and a little
key,
bit of syncopation,
and
this often
love,
provides rest and a sense of arrival within the music. The dominant triad, which we use
love,
Roman
all of a
numeral
sudden it
5
starts to become
show,
more interesting,
built on the
and
fifth
it's
degree
because
of the
of
scale,
the
and tends
harmony.
to like to move to the tonic. And then the subdominant
A chord
triad,
is
Roman
2 or
numeral
more
4,
pitches
built
sounding
on
at the same
fourth degree
time.
of the scale, and
The
it
basic
likes to
chord
move
in
up
Western
toward
music
the
is
dominant.
called a
So,
triad.
and the word tri kind of gives away the fact that there's usually 3 notes in a triad.
4, 5,
There's going to be 3
1,
pitches
but
and a
imagine
specific
an actual
pattern,
chord
and the
being played over
triads
that.
consist of 2 intervals of a third stacked up on
A chord
top of each other.
progression is when we
We
take
count,
chords
this
and
happens
we
to be an
move
F,
them in a
so the
purposeful
letters in
direction
this
in a
chord are
purposeful
F,
pattern.
A,
The bass
C.
line often
Okay.
is where we
FAC.
look
And
in any
F to
piece of
A
music
spans
to kind
3
of see
musical
what's
letters, so
happening
we call that
harmonically,
a
because
third,
when the
and
bass
A to
note
C
changes,
spans 3
usually
letters in the
we
alphabet
have a new
also.
chord that's being outlined.
An arpeggio happens when we take a chord
Consonance
and
and
instead of
dissonance,
sounding
nice
it all
college
together
word. So
as one
we
unit,
have
we break it up
conjunct
and
and
stagger
disjunct
it and
to describe connected melodies and
sequentially.
disjointed
So,
melodies. And now we have consonance and dissonance, same prefixes, but now they're describing what things sound like when they're played together. So a consonance is when we have a chord
we
or
can break up chords
that sound
and play them
agreeable
one
and
note at a
stable
time.
and nice together.
They'll have sort
That's
of a
called
melodic
consonance.
contour
And
at that point.
it's usually,
But we still hear
the chord.
something that reduces stress in the music.
Three
Believe it or not,
common
we have
triads
points of
are the
tension in
tonic,
music.
which I already mentioned.
Dissonance
built
is
on
when
one,
we
the very
take chords
strong
and
home
pitches
base
that
of
sound
each key,
disagreeable
and
this
possibly
often
unstable
provides
harmonically.
rest and a sense
And
of
we
arrival
insert
within
those
the
into
music.
the music.
The
And
dominant triads,
dissonance
which
create
we use a
a
Roman numeral 5
tension
to
and
show,
anxiety
built on the
sometimes
fifth
in the
degree of the
music,
scale, and tends to like to move to the
consonance
tonic.
and dissonance is
And then the
actually
subdominant
happening
triad,
constantly
Roman
within
numeral
music.
4,
We have
built on
chords
the
that are
fourth
more
degree
or
of the
less
scale, and
consonant
it likes to
that we
move
put
up
together.
toward the
If
dominant.
all
So
chords in music were
1,
consonants,
5, 1,
consonances,
or 1,
it would just be very
4,
blah and
5,
boring.
1,
Likewise,
but
if
imagine
everything
an
was a
actual
dissonance,
chord
it
being played
would
over that.
make our nerves all jangly, and we would probably not enjoy
A chord
it either.
progression is when we take chords and we move them in
Next,
a
we have the
purposeful
resolution of phrases.
direction
So the
in a
ends of
purposeful
musical
pattern.
sentences
The bass line
are called
often
cadences.
is where we look,
And if you were ever in a
any
drum line,
piece
this
of
is
music
different.
to
This
kind
is
of
not
see
a
what's
drum
happening
cadence. This is not a
harmonically,
rhythmic
because
term.
when the bass
It's a
note
harmonic
changes,
term.
usually
So
we
the
have a new
portion of a
chord
musical
that's being
phrase that leads to
outlined.
the last chord is called a cadence. And we have some different
Consonance
kinds
and
of cadences.
dissonance,
You don't
nice
really have
college
to
word.
memorize
So
any
we
of them
have,
for the class. I want you to
conjunct
understand
and
what a
disjunct
cadence
is
to
and
describe
how it functions.
connected melodies
So
and
a half
disjointed
cadence
melodies.
gives us
and
sort
now
of
we
a
have
resting
consonance
point,
and
but
dissonance,
not a
same
final
prefixes,
resting
but
point in
now
the
they're
music.
describing
And an authentic cadence
what
is
things sound like
very
when they're
final
played together.
sounding.
So a
In
consonance
the
is
bass
when we have a chord
notes
or
of this
chords
half cadence
that sound
we
agreeable and
hear,
stable and nice together. That's called a consonance.
F, G,
And
G,
it's usually,
but in the authentic cadence,
something that reduces stress in the music. Believe it or not, we have points of tension in music.
C,
Dissonance,
which is much more
is when we
take
take
resting
chords and
place.
pitches that sound disagreeable and possibly unstable harmonically. All of these
And we
things are
insert
hard
those
to
into the
understand
music,
unless you
and
hear some music.
dissonance
So,
create
we're going
a
to listen
tension
to
and
a
anxiety
classic
sometimes
rock
in the
song
music
that
that
was written when I was
consonance
a
and
year
dissonance
old.
is actually
Shows you how old
happening
I am.
constantly within
And
music. We have
it's
chords
called the
that
Duke
are more
of
or less
Earl, and you can
consonant
see
that we
some
put together. If
chords
all
that are
chords
outlined
in music
here,
were
any of you guitar
consonants,
players may know how to play a one chord,
consonances,
a six,
it
a
would
four,
just
and a
be
five,
very
depending
blah
on
and
what
boring
key you're
thinking about.
Likewise, if everything was
this
a dissonance,
is a famous
it would
progression that
make our nerves
occurs
all
in the song,
jangly,
the
and we would
Duke
probably
of
not
Earl,
enjoy it either.
which in the 8th edition of our textbook
Next, we have the
is outlined
resolution
on
of
page
phrases.
30 if
So
you
the
want to take a
ends
look
of
at it.
musical
And
sentences
we're going to hear
are
a little
called
recording of this.
cadences.
And
And if you were ever in a drum
progression
line, this is different.
is
This
very
is not a drum
distinctive.
cadence.
That's
This
one
is
of the
not a
reasons
rhythmic
why this is
term.
the one that's
It's a
chosen for you
harmonic
all
term.
to hear.
So the portion
But,
of a musical phrase that leads to the last
1,
chord is called a cadence.
6, 4,
And we have some different kinds of cadences. You
5,
don't really have to
1,
memorize any of them
6,
for the class. I want you to understand what a
5.
cadence
If you can play those
is
chord
and how it
progressions
functions.
on a guitar, you
So
can probably be in a
half
garage band
cadence
right now.
gives us sort of a resting point.
All right, let's hear
but
this a little bit.
not a final resting point in the music. And an authentic cadence is very final sounding. So in the bass notes of this half cadence,
Let me ask you a
we
question.
hear
Where were you in 1962? What memory does it bring back when the Duke of Earl comes by?
By the way, this
singing
dancing is a little painful to watch. Sorry. G, C, which is much more of a resting place.
1, 6, 4,
All of these things are hard to understand unless you hear some music. So, we're going to listen to a classic rock song that was written when I was a year old. Shows you how old I am. And it's called the Duke of Earl, and you can see some chords that are outlined here. Any of you guitar players may know how to play a 1 chord, a 6, a 4, and a 5, depending on what key you're thinking about. But this is a famous progression that occurs in the song, the Duke of Earl, which in the 8th edition of our textbook is outlined on page 30 if you want to take a look at it. And we're going to hear a little recording of this, and this
chord progression is very distinctive. It's one of the reasons why this is the one that's chosen for you all to hear. But 1, 6, 4, 5. Now the chords are held for 2 bars. 6, 4, 5. If you can play those chord progressions on a guitar, you can probably be in a garage band. 5. All right, let's hear this a little bit. 1, 6, 4, 5.
Let me ask you a question. Where were you in 1962? What memory does it bring back when the Duke of Earl comes by?
By the way, this dancing is a little painful to watch. Sorry. So I think that illustrates it pretty clearly. And we have one more slide to look at. 6. This is another one where I want you to just kind of think about the differences between consonant harmonies and dissonant harmonies, and how when a dissonance resolves to a consonance, it's really a beautiful moment and kind of release of tension. So let's hear this by Eric Whitaker. He's conducting actually the virtual choir here. If you're ever interested in being in a virtual choir, you can see what his next project is. He probably has one in the works right now.
See me.
See me.
Don't stare at me.
See me.
Here we go. Now the chords are held for 2 bars.
I didn't discover choral music or really classical music at all until I was 18 years old. My very first experience singing, hearing these the dissonance was just so exquisite. And so I think when I finally started composing when I was 21, I filled my music with those dissonances, those vibrations, because it just makes me feel, I just want to die in that moment.
So I think that illustrates it pretty clearly. And we have one more slide to look at.
This is my first choir ever, my own choir.
This is another one where I want you to just kind of think about the differences between consonant harmonies and dissonant harmonies, and how when a dissonance resolves to a consonance, it's really a beautiful moment and kind of release of tension. So let's hear this by Eric Whitaker. He's conducting actually the virtual choir here. If you're ever interested in being in a virtual choir, you can see what his next project is. He probably has one in the works right now.
During the recording session, there were a number of times when the harmonies were just exactly in tune, and there was a fluttering in the air. I don't stare at me.
See me.
Those dissonances, those harmonies, that's me. That's the sound that is me. When I hear it back, I think that's my true name. I didn't discover choral music or really classical music at all until I was 18 years old. My very first experience singing and what their journey is, hearing these close harmonies around the performers. I want them also to have this. It's just so exquisite. And so I think when I finally started composing, when I was 21, every moment I filled my music with those dissonances, those vibrations, because it just makes me feel. I just want to die in that moment. Originally, I was commissioned to write a setting of Robert Frost's The Eric Whitaker Singers is my first, and after the performance, we were told by the Robert Frost professional group, not only based here in London, and the singers would be singers. Sue, it truly feels like driving a Ferrari. And so I asked my tiniest friend Charles Anthony Silvestri face, or if he would be a with my breath changes everything. The color dramatically changes on the exact metrical structure. Through them as the Robert Frost, an entirely new, subtle, eloquent, and intelligent that I've never had a chance to really use before. And I thought he might have something lurking inside of this hidden gift. And boy, was I right. It's just a...
So I apologize, that actually was not
During
the
the
virtual
recording
choir,
session, there
although
were a
you
number
can
of
look
times
that up
when
on the
the
internet
harmonies
if
were
you're ever
just
interested.
exactly in tune,
Eric
and there was a
Whitaker's virtual
fluttering
choir.
in the air. I thought I was going
So
to pass out.
that's all for this chapter. I
dissonances,
know
those
it's
close
a
harmonies,
lot
that's
of
me.
slides.
That's the sound
Weeks
that is
2
me.
and
When I
3
hear
in
it
this
back, I
class
think
are the
that-
most
that's my true
intense
name.
when it comes to learning a lot of new terms if you are not already involved with music. You don't have to have that prerequisite in your life. However, you have to dig in and learn this material, and I do suggest you chunking up things, maybe making some note cards, make note cards
Very
with
conscious of the
rhythmic
audience
words
and
on
what their
them,
journey
like
is going to be through
meter,
the piece. Of the
beat,
performers, I want them also to have this
syncopation,
wonder and
maybe
awe-filled
your cards that
experience.
have to
I
do
try to make
with
every
melody,
moment an
have
ecstatic experience, whether small or large.
stepwise,
I aspire to it.
skips on them. The harmony things can be thinking about tonality and major and minor and chromatic. And so if you can
Originally, I was
chunk them up and
commissioned
get them into
to write a
categories,
setting of
when we get to
Robert
our
Frost
test,
stopping by Woods on a snowy
which is at the
evening.
beginning
And
of
after
week
the
4,
performance, we
and
were
you're
told by the
looking
Robert
at
Frost estate
maybe
that
a
not
multiple
only could we not
choice
use it,
set
but that
of
we
answers, and I'm
singers
asking you a
would be
question about
sued if
rhythm,
we're ever performing.
and
And so I
in
asked
the
my
answer
friend Charles
category,
Anthony
there's
Sylvester
something that clearly is not about
he would
rhythm
be
at
up
all. It's about the
for writing
key of something.
a
You
completely
can
new
toss
poem
out
with the
that
exact
answer
metrical
if
structure
you've learned
as
these
the Robert
in
Frost.
groupings.
He's one of the most
So
eloquent and
I
intelligent
do
people
suggest
I've
that,
ever
and
met.
also you can check in
I
with
thought
me at office hours
he
or
might have something
anytime
lurking
if you're
inside of
struggling
this
to learn
hidden
some of the
gift.
listening skills that
And boy, was I
are
right.
part of
It's
this
just a-
first unit. Good luck! So I apologize, that actually was not the virtual choir, although you can look that up on the internet if you're ever interested. Eric Whitaker's virtual choir. So that's all for this chapter. I know it's a lot of slides. Weeks 2 and 3 in this class are the most intense when it comes to learning a lot of new terms if you are not already involved with music. You don't have to have that prerequisite in your life. However, you have to dig in and learn this material, and I do suggest you chunking up things, maybe making some note cards, make note cards with rhythmic words on them like meter, beat, syncopation. Maybe your cards that have to do with melody have stepwise skips on them. The harmony things can be thinking about tonality and major and minor and chromatic. And so if you can chunk them up and get them into categories, when we get to our test, which is at the beginning of week 4, and you're looking at maybe a multiple choice set of answers, and I'm asking you a question about rhythm, and in the answer category, there's something that clearly is not about rhythm at all. It's about the key of something. You can toss out that answer if you've learned these in groupings. So I do suggest that, and also you can check in with me at office hours or anytime if you're struggling to learn some of the listening skills that are part of this first unit. Good luck!